Hey you, welcome back to Minecraft. This is Intimidating Scones, and this is my official website release party. So, welcome to the fun. Um, just a forewarning, I am absolutely exhausted. I have been working so hard on the website, uh, the intimidatengscones.com. I am so proud of everything. Working so hard on the creative writings up there, but I didn't actually mean for my my release date, my launch date, to coincide with my first day at my new job. So that's a little special. I spent all day today in training, and then came home and directly went straight to the last final touches on intimidatengscones.com, and I'm working my badonkadonk off trying to get this all done. That's okay. It'll still be well lit. I could just destroy it, but I definitely need levels. I might try to farm some zombies instead. But yeah, so I'm trying to get everything done under a huge time crunch because how else do artists work, really? And I'm just thinking to myself, dinner's optional. Completely optional. Food's not necessary. Not in the slightest. I wonder if I could just put one directly underneath it. Oh well. So, the thing I wanted to talk about tonight is the feature creative work of my website, Fields of Morning. And I wanted to talk a little bit about where it came from. That maybe not so much the meaning behind it as the story behind it. I have an apple. I should go try to get me a horse. I don't have any food with me. That's smart. So, Fields of Morning, and if you're joining me via Twitch, welcome. Thank you for watching and supporting me. If you are watching this after the fact on YouTube, hi. I would not blame you at all if you paused the video, went and read Fields of Morning, and then came back and watched this video. Completely up to you, but that is a suggestion. And of course, I would like to also take a moment to give fair warning. I don't really intend to talk about anything trigger warning tonight, but Fields of Morning itself has a trigger warning, and just because of that nature, I'm going to go ahead and give a trigger warning for this video. So, yeah. It really shouldn't be too bad, though. Oh, that's what happened to my food. That when I died. I died off camera one night. Alright. Now, what on earth was I doing in this game anyway? I guess it really doesn't matter because that's not why we're here. We're here because website. So, Fields of Morning is, I mean, it's very obviously high fantasy. High fantasy is mostly what I write. But as I was working on it, and as it was going along, I started to kind of realize that it wasn't just high fantasy. It sort of had this psychological landscape effect to it. Like a drawing is a psychological landscape. And it was very unsettling. And so I ended up kind of calling it a high fantasy psychological thriller. Oh, hey! I can never remember if you're supposed to kill the spider first or the... Ooh. Or if it matters. But that just happened. Oh, Enderman. So... Basically, part of the reason I decided to go ahead and give it that genre, which I'm not even sure if that's a real genre. It doesn't really matter. I get to do what I want. But, oh dear. Oh, bad thing. Oh, it wasn't too bad. Creepy. Creepy as hell. But not too bad. Hey you. Hey. Hey you. Yeah. So the reason I decided to go ahead and go with that was because the setting of Fields of Morning is a literal psychological landscape. The story is based around mostly the character Ultimum. He's not the main character. Morrigan is the main character, which if you know your Celtic mythology, you're going to probably not have any... You're probably going to be unhappy that, whoa, let's not beat you with wheat. Not going to be happy I named her Morrigan because it is actually a name meaningful to me, not meaningful to the mythology. You are a giant rabbit, you know that? I wonder if rabbits are really that big in the wild. I guess I've seen pet rabbits that got pretty big. So, Ultimum was not originally a character, but more like a thought experiment, just like his counterpart, Primus. If you don't know, I studied Latin. Latin was my major in college. And if you are unfamiliar with Latin, a little bit of a spoiler alert for the story. But Primus means the first, and Ultimum means the last. A lot of people would guess Primus, primary, etc. But Ultimum, or Ultimum Ultimus, didn't really come into English as anything to do with the last. The way that worked was, I guess in Latin it was sort of the idea of the very best thing was going to be the very last one created, because if there's no way to make it better, you're not going to have another iteration of it. So, you know, instead of having version 4.0, they had version Ultimate. Hey, you. Hey. Bite me. No Ender Pearl. I hope I'm not getting myself terribly lost. Oh no. Home ought to be... Um, home ought to be... Um, you know, in a direction. Just some direction. Hey! Yeah. Eat that apple. What? I thought I could just put a saddle on a horse and try to ride it. Well, fine. Screw you too, horse. I don't need you. I have my rabbit friends. My dead rabbit friends. So, in that sort of a sense, Ultimum, I mean, clearly his name is going to have meaning in the story. Oh, I recognize that. I've been over here. I'm going the wrong way. Home is back this way. Not that I necessarily have to go back home, but whatever. But the landscape itself was not actually created for Ultimum, it was created for Primus. And even really before her as a similar thought experiment, almost a character experiment. She was not invented for a story at all. She was really invented out of misery. And that is what the character became, a personification of misery and pain. So, yeah, you can see where this is all sort of setting up into the psychological thriller kind of genre going on. Oh dear. I better go take care of that. Doo-doo-doo. So, yeah. Do I have any? Yeah, I do have some arrows. All right. Let's do this. So, the landscape itself. It started when I was not really a young author, but pretty early in my career as a writer. And when I was definitely still a pretty young adult. Good grief, takes a lot of arrows. I know one of those didn't really hit very well, so that's probably more what did it. Where's that spider? I wasn't hearing things, was I? Nope. It's around here somewhere. There you are. Hey, friend. The landscape itself started with sort of a concept of childhood on one side of it. It always started at the top of this hill. And when I first imagined it, and this is like just when I am brainstorming for story ideas and just messing around with just creative concepts in my head, doing little else. I mean, I would just lay in bed and create. But it would always start out that I was on the top of this grassy hill, looking off to the west. And I never really knew what was behind me. I always knew I ought to turn around and look, but never really could quite tell. And it didn't really matter because off in that direction was just too interesting. So I would look off in that direction, and off in the distance, I could see a river, but it was sort of a fake river. It was sort of like a river in a video game where the water wasn't quite real. And even though my mind was limitless with possibilities, I always imagined this river as not incredibly real. But what was real about it was this willow tree. And that willow tree was sort of my concept of adulthood. And not just normal things of what an adult is or does, etc., but the concept of adult intimacy as well. At that time, I hadn't had any sexual experiences. And this was, for the longest time, really the only thing in the psychological landscape. And I could never really quite imagine anything more. When I would try, it just didn't feel like it fit. Like it wasn't quite there. Not like with the rest of my stories, how I could just imagine, and then this happens, and then that happens, and oh, let's try this. No, that doesn't work. Okay, that didn't happen. Okay, let's try something else. Okay, that works. Let's say this happened instead. Which is just, if that were, real, that would just be all sorts of wonky timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. You have no idea. Just to be a character and be cognizant of what a creator would be doing with you, just all the messing with things. So while I could do all of that in a normal story, I couldn't seem to do this with this psychological landscape. And eventually, as I started kind of becoming a young adult, I turned around and looked to the east. And I was able to see the other side of the hill. And on this side, everything looked very real, and in more detail than I ever imagined any of my stories. That I could just close my eyes and picture it. And on that side was really, really tall, sort of prairie grass. And a forest. Just the absolute most beautiful. Sorry, my chair, uncomfortable. Let me get a drink. Excuse me. Most beautiful forest of sycamore trees, and then every flowering tree you can imagine. Red buds and dogwoods and cherry trees. Everything that had a bloom. Tulip trees. And it was just, the air was floating with pollens and petals and everything. It's just the most beautiful, beautiful place. And there was a river there as well. And the river was very, very real. It was deep and clear and cool, but not cold. And there I found a waterfall. It was a beautiful waterfall that just cascaded off of rocks, levels and levels of rocks. And the kind of rocks that were smoothed down by the water, and you could lay on them comfortably. Oh, I get to try this. Well, it stopped it from going into the water, but it didn't go up onto it like I expected it to. That's okay. Not a big deal. I don't even know why I'm getting all this wheat because I don't have any animals. I could attract some over, but I don't care enough to. That's sort of my problem. I just don't give a care. A lot of junk too. Put that in there until I figure out what I'm doing wrong with it. And need some dirt at least, some cobble at least, and some coal. So, oh, wood. Never leave home without wood. All right, so, and this was pretty much setting up my psychological landscape. And I never really, I never knew what to do with this area. I didn't want to necessarily tell any stories with it. It was just interesting. All right. Onward. I didn't take, oh, no, I do. I have some. Not a lot. Not a lot by way of going to be much exploring going on. So we will make some more. All right. We're ready for things to happen. So this this psychological landscape actually became very, very important when I became traumatized and started suffering from PTSD. One of the really difficult things to remember about PTSD is that people who go through it go through the same stages of mourning that of grief, of someone who is suffering from grief. And the first stage is denial. And it's interesting because most people who develop PTSD talk about it as if they had died. So that kind of makes the fact that you go through stages of grief all the more, I don't want to say bizarre, but kind of is. Good grief. I just want to get down. This is what dirt is for. This will get me back. Hello. I'm gonna wanna... Oh God! No! No! Oh jeez, I'm probably gonna die. I didn't bring water. Come on! Why can't I stop, drop, and roll? I listen to all my things. Well, wasn't I just talking about dying? Ah, jeez. This is why you never dig straight down. Where's my iron? Am I blind? No, it's mostly in here. All right, well, that worked well. That worked well. I come all the way up here when I have a crafting table down there. I'm not efficient, and I'm not telling this story very quickly either. All right, so let's get to the story. A lot of people who suffer from PTSD feel like it is a manner of death, that they had died. It is a very common feeling, a very common way of expressing what going through PTSD is like. I mean, clearly nobody knows what it's actually like to die, but who can really blame a victim for finding an expressive way to explain what it feels like? And so the first stage was denial. It was going, this didn't really happen. It wasn't even thinking this didn't really happen. It was not thinking about it at all because it wasn't real. And like massive amounts of suppressed memories. That's also very common. But I started noticing that every time I would go to this psychological landscape of mine, this almost safe place I had created for myself, every time I went there, again, I couldn't really force the place to be any other way than how I imagined it. I couldn't change it like I can change a story. I could only just experience it. And every time I went there, I had this horrible problem that everything was dying in it. And for the longest time, I had no idea why. Okay. I'm actually gonna start getting iron again because clearly I'm bad enough that I may run out of iron because I keep having to remake full suits of armor. Hi. So I started noticing that the place was dying, and I couldn't seem to do anything about it. I couldn't make it stop because imagining it as any other way was just wrong. It was as impossible as trying to change the real world because you can change a dream. And I didn't know what to do about it. Eventually, I did admit to myself that I had been through something traumatizing, something very, very horrible. And when I did, I moved on to the next stage, which is anger. And what I did next is what created Fields of Mourning. I imagined myself in this long black cloak and this hood that could go over my head as part of the cloak, and this long, sleek dress with a laced corset. And whereas before there was only an east and a west to this world, suddenly I went south. I went south through that beautiful forest that was now dead, not a bloom on the tree. The once clear and magnificent river was now cold and dark, dark with shadows. And I just kept going south until I found the ocean. The river poured down cliffs so tall and so steep. And I leapt off the ledge into the ocean. I imagined that black wings had come from my shoulders, and I used them not to fly, but to swim in a completely empty, barren, lifeless ocean. And you have to remember, I've scuba dived. I know what it looks like beneath the waves. I know how much life is there, that it's not just depth and darkness. And yet in this world, that was the only thing possible. Depth and darkness. Maybe I won't dig straight down again. You know, learning from our mistakes. It's always a thing possible. Whoops, what the? Clicking buttons I'm not meaning to click. But I used my wings to swim through that ocean and then rise back up the cliff. And I knew what I had to do. I went, well, the first thing I actually did was I changed the way that the dress fit on me that I was wearing, which is interesting because that is the only time I have ever made a physical change to that world that I could, and it was just like, not even just like when writing, because when writing it was like, it was never like that. I decided it should be like this. It was like that the whole time. But it was more that I put my hand over the corset and just drew the fabric up so that I was completely covered from, you know, the tip of my toe to the top of my head. That there was no way to see where the corset ended and the hood began. Wow. Look at these resources. Om nom nom. I am going to say this. I'm not going to talk too much about the nature of the trauma I went through, but like most PTSD, it was human induced. It was caused by one human being doing a very horrible thing to another human being. And what I did then was I went to that willow tree, that symbol of what I had expected my life to become, what I had expected being an adult would be like. But the reality was, the world was a horrible place. And I went to that willow tree, and I faced the person who had hurt me in my mind. It was the first time I had done so, and it would not be the last. But I faced him, and I imagined him basically as evil incarnate, as a demon, a monster, something so inhuman. And just like I had had the power to change what I wore and how I was seen, or rather, how I wasn't seen, I used a manner of telekinesis power to tear the willow tree limb from limb, to turn it into this incredible giant spear, and to stake the creature with it. And I just completely destroyed my concept, basically my childhood, to cope with what my adulthood had begun to look like. How my adulthood had begun. As the years went by, that psychological landscape continued to change. Didn't bring any food down. But just as always before, I didn't seem to be really in control of the changes. The willow tree was sort of both present and not simultaneously. And there was still nothing to the north. Almost like it didn't exist. It was just mountains in the distance. And from that night, Primus was really created. The main identifying factor of Primus, no matter what she wore, no matter how she acted, she was faceless. Completely and entirely faceless. That the hood always cast complete shadow over her. I felt like that was very, very important and telling. Oh, wow. I was so immersed in my story, I didn't notice people are actually here. Hi, everybody. Thanks for getting my message, Ririn. Welcome, Kitty Crazy 491. And thank you for the hug. Oh my god. My heart is pounding remembering all that. I put all my torches on the ground and have no idea where I'm going. I think this is the way out, though. My name's Intimidate. Well, my name. You can call me Intimidating Scones. What? Oh, it's a good game. What you've stumbled into is, I guess I should be reading these comments since the YouTubers are going to be like, what is she talking about? But yeah. If you're just joining in, this is sort of the release party of my website of creative writing, intimidatengscones.com. And I'm talking about the backstory behind the feature creative work, Fields of Mourning, and what it actually really means and what it means to me. So, this whole psychological landscape and where this world came from, and this it is the world that these characters are in, but they don't really quite acknowledge what that means, which is sort of what I'm most excited about with creating this work. But yeah, the creation of Ultimum, while not entirely similar, was along the same idea where he was a character that was a thought experiment. Aw, YouTube Kitty Crazy 491 is saying that I'm gonna guess her kids, his or her kids, show up to school tired because they play Minecraft all night. Oh, and Riran says that he read my comic once. My comic is actually not on my website, but he read my comic on the story behind how I got the name Intimidating Scones. And he was like, oh, that would totally happen in Dungeons and Dragons, which Intimidating Scones was sort of a three-part name, the final of which was thanks to D&D. I can tell that story later, but the character Ultimum, who is, you know, a very important, I mean, he's kind of a main character of Fields of Mourning. And he was a thought experiment as well, a character experiment. He wasn't really created for any sort of story. and I actually didn't think I would ever put him in a story. I'm rather surprised at how it has turned out. And I'm not actually going to get so much into where he comes from because I really want you to go and read and pick it up through the story. And maybe that's something I can tell at the very end when it is all done and made. All right, this is fine. So, oops, that didn't work so well, did it? What? Oh, So that was mainly what I wanted to talk about, to put out there, so that if you want to have that backstory to what you're reading, it is available. And thanks to you guys for showing up. Do you have any questions? Anything caught your attention? I know it takes a while between the video lag and comments, but I'm getting the feeling that nobody has any questions. It's probably hard to have any when you haven't read the story, but you should definitely go read it. It's on intimidatingscones.com. Totally missed the question. The question was if you have any questions. If you wanted to ask me anything about the story, about my experience, the psychological landscape, or the story itself, the website, anything. AMA. And now I forget what I was coming up here for. Complete brain fart. What did I come up here for? Do you know who I am? Well, given that you're asking if I know who you are, I'm guessing I do. And given that you were talking about Minecraft and kids, and multiple kids, you're either a parent or a school teacher. So I'm guessing you're probably Tori. Also, given that Tori loves cats. That's what I came up here for, to get rid of those. Don't need that either. I need to go kill more animals because I keep dropping all my beef into lava. My logic is infallible. Oh, next time I might just put the chat in the video so that for all of posterity. All right, well, that's really pretty much what I wanted to put out there, was the intensity of where this story is coming from. And it's really in its infancy that there is so much that I do intend to do. Oh, Riren does have a question. How did you decide on the personality distribution of the characters? Personality distribution. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a shot in the dark as to what you mean to that. Do you want to clarify real fast? What I'm guessing you're asking is the difference between Morrigan's personality of very matter of fact and accepting, and Ultimum as being both a little bit innocent, but also very not at the same time. Although I suppose that part hasn't been published yet. So, yeah. Do you want to clarify? Okay. Which means I'm guessing you actually read the story. Oh my God, ahead of the game. I'm flattered. Okay, so um, the decision between to get into that, I'll actually really have to oh, in regards to the comic. Oh, okay. What Riran is actually talking about, in case you haven't figured out, I know Riran in real life. Um, and what he's actually talking about is the comic I created that had different characters of my personality, or different sides of my personality. And the comic was very much about um, mostly just the humor of my life. Um, but I wrote it only while I started it very soon after I got PTSD. I began suffering from PTSD, and it only was created during that period of my life. Um, Guy was so PO'd he ripped the ground. It's getting dark, Run. Yeah, I should probably pay attention rather than looking at. Especially since when I'm not paying attention and I wander around, I get lost. And I still haven't done the smart thing of writing down in a journal the coordinates of my home base. But I'm pretty sure it's back over this way. If not, then I'm doomed. So, the character distribution in my comic was somewhat based on another common thing that happens from PTSD, a compartmentalizing of your mind, because your brain really cannot. Oh, I am going the wrong way. Crap. I'm gonna die out here. Compartmentalizing of your brain because it cannot handle what it's suffering through. And I did that through the creation of different characters. I can't remember where I'm going. I think this is the general direction of where I need to go because I remember those features. I'm gonna have to climb a mountain to get home though. Or I could be getting myself a lot more lost. This is possible too. Um, and the characters I created were there was 5 of them, and or no, there was 4 of them. The fifth one was not actually a character that represented a side of me, but one of them was Primus. She became a late introduction to the comic as somewhat my need, my very desperate need to make light of my pain and suffering. And the way the character distribution happened was, again, something that I didn't so much decide on, but it sort of happened, which is the third time I've talked about that tonight, but I really have to stress this is not how writers write. Things don't just happen. They plan things out and they create a story outline and they change and play with the world and, you know, test different characters and different character personalities. They don't just let things happen. So it was very weird of me to create the characters in this way. Yeah, home is over that ledge. There we go. Ah. So the characters in it were Mao, the main character, and she was actually named after a card game. And she was honestly a big part of my anger as well. As she was just snarky and virulent and volatile, angry most of the time, but in a funny way. Oh, nope, nope. Oh, ow, ow, ow. Rerun remembers Mao. He's like, oh god, not Mao. Then the other character, so she was, you know, and also she was a side of me that was um, very, very intelligent. She was the side that was the student. Um, Mao was the perfect name for someone encompassing all that. Well, she was very intelligent. She was the student. She was also not really, even though she was the intelligent side, she was not the rational side. The rational side was actually Ange, who incidentally is also the only male side. He was a fairy that is actually gay. So, given that a side of me is a boy, but gay, I think that pretty much says that I'm straight as an arrow. Even the male side of me likes men. So, that's a thing. But he was the representative of my attempt to figure out how to be an adult, how to get my life under control and do all the things that an adult is supposed to do, you know, everything from figuring out how to pay rent to figuring out how to, you know, cook for myself. Because this was definitely in the time when I first was living on my own. Riran says he's as straight as a circle. But then Dea was sort of the crazy, adorable side of me. The part that was a little bit insane, a little bit weird, but also kind of cute at the same time. And that's definitely a side I've never shown on this channel or in my writing, so I'm sure that sounds a little odd, but she's a fun-loving side. And that came out of, and Dea is actually she's the reason she's the reason I'm intimidating scones, because she is the one who had the scones that got warped into a terrible story. So Dea is the creator of the scones. All right, well, now we all know. And then there was also Primus. And Primus pretty much exclusively represented my trauma. This is cool. And she represented what it was like to have what's known as a invisible disease, even though PTSD I don't consider a disease or an illness. I don't like those terms. Probably most psychologists would call it a mental illness and classify it as such. I would call it an ailment because illness kind of assumes that there's something wrong with your immune system or something, whereas I view it more as something more along the line of a gunshot wound, something that was caused by something that happened to you. So, she was very much just a representation of what it was like to try to live a normal life, and try to get along with people, because a lot of her comics were about seeing the world in a much darker view than everyone around her. One of my favorite comics about her is just a one-framer where she is looking straight at the reader and says, "The longest, most painful form of suicide is to live." Ugh. Just creeps me out imagining and remembering. So, and that's actually partially where the names Primus and Ultimum came from, was because Primus was the original. Oh, I think it's, yeah, that's pretty. Primus was the original, and I tried to use her character multiple times, and she wouldn't let me. The characters just dissolved, and I couldn't create them, and I couldn't control them. And again, that really crazy thing where the characters are just controlling themselves. And so all those failed attempts, I just started numbering them and then designating the original as Primus. So, yeah, I guess I should put a trigger warning on this video now that I've talked about suicide. Crud. Oh well. That's why I went ahead and did one at the beginning. So, the distribution of the personalities and the characters was really just a coping mechanism. being able to compartmentalize, I need to be an adult right now. What would Ange do? And then compartmentalize, I have all this anger. What would Mao do? Mao was always the kind of character that, yes, she was angry and yes, she was virulent, but she always managed some way of handling the situation with an outcome that wasn't funny to her, but actually funny. And being able to do that really did help me. Where is the humor in this misery? And then being able to call on Dea when I needed to be maybe not myself, but likable. That Dea was really me when I was being strange and silly. Because if nothing else, Dea is strange. She is the one that can break fourth walls. That's actually why she's Dea. She's a goddess. uh, but when I was in a social situation where something bad would happen, if people found out that I had PTSD, I would use Dea to hide behind because she was sweet and likable and silly and quirky. And then Primus was really the truth of what was going on in my heart, which is why she made it into Fields of Mourning. Why Fields of Mourning, in all honesty, is more about her than either Morrigan or Ultimum. So I just spent about 20 minutes answering that question. Riren says, "Aw, scones, we love you the way you are." I appreciate that. I don't quite feel that perfect self-love that I wish was there, but I definitely have self-appreciation. I went through some pretty rough stuff and made it through. Something I've called shades of hell. Shades of hell is this idea that everyone has their own shade of hell. Everyone has their own idea of what hell is. Everyone has experienced a manner of it because just living is rough. Even kids that have the problem of their favorite toy broke. That's a problem for a kid. And it's not worth saying that it's a dumb problem because it's a kid problem. And let's hope kids don't have adult problems. So never treat someone poorly because you think their shade of hell is lighter than yours. Because we all have our own and we all have to deal with what's in front of us. But remember that concept, that phrasing, shade of hell. Take that in with your reading of Fields of Mourning. Fields of Mourning is an incomplete work. It will be updated periodically as it is completed. I encourage you to check back at intimidatingscones.com often and to check in with me here with Twitch and YouTube. Oh, Kitty Crazy 491 says you'd be surprised how many kids have adult problems. Whew, that breaks my heart. I know it's a thing. I know maybe not what that looks like from personal experience, but well, Ririn says that he will check it religiously. I think you should too. I think that's enough self-promotion for one night. I've gone nearly 30 minutes longer than I meant to. I really appreciate you guys joining me for the debut of IntimidatingScones.com. I'm hoping to have a lot more periodic videos to talk a lot more of my writing, more of my experiences, and how they tie in with my writing, and hopefully some happy subjects as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Um, there's not a comment section of IntimidatingScones.com, but there is a contact section, and feel free to shoot me a message that way. So thanks for hanging out with me, and talk to you next time.